Hello and welcome to Spotlight On, the companion podcast of the Tonearm.com. Here, we talk with musicians, writers, and innovators about the ideas shaping media, art, and culture. I'm your host, Lawrence Purrier. Today, the spotlight shines on organist, composer, and sound artist Hampus Lindwall. Hampus started as a guitarist who cut his teeth copying Steve Vai solos, but now sits behind a 78-stop church organ. He has been the organist at Saint-Esprit in Paris since 2005, and his latest album, Brace for Impact, throws tradition out the window. Recorded on a massive organ in Düsseldorf with guitarist Stephen O'Malley, this music draws on everything from experimental music pioneer Xenakis to heavy metal and much more. Hampus takes us through this remarkable project, and he shares how a Swedish metalhead became one of the most adventurous voices in contemporary organ music. And now, Hampus Lindwall. I'd love to start a little bit talking about the new record, talking about Brace for Impact. What is this idea of post-internet organ music? You know, it's a great one-liner from a marketing point of view, but as I sit with the album, I can't say it's inaccurate, but I can't tell you what it means either. And I'm curious, whether or not you talk about that phrase with me. What's the conceptual framework that this album's built around?
No, but that's an interesting question because I didn't come up with this. It was Robert Berry who wrote the text for the album. I was also kind of skeptical to try to put some label on it. And especially, I'm not really what is considered the post-internet generation, because the post-internet generation are the people who grew up with internet existing already. So I'm a little bit too old for that. I think he thought it was so influenced by so much internet media, internet art, internet ways of working with algorithms and computers that made sense. So I didn't protest, actually. I thought it was okay. And let's see. I also was kind of looking forward to see what kind of debate this could come to later.
Yeah. Has it stirred anything up? Have people latched onto that concept?
No, most people just repeat the phrase, but you're the first one who asks really the question.
All right. Well, I appreciate that.
I wouldn't consider it also. I would consider more, I don't know. I mean, it's always difficult to contextualize yourself, but let's go. It's like now it's there. So let's see what happens with it.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's like it's a post-organ album. It's it's almost redefinitional of what the organ can be and do.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah, it's so exciting. Tell me a little bit about Stephen O'Malley, that collaboration, and also it's such a powerful opening to the record, especially if somebody comes to it thinking, oh, it's a record of organ music.
Yeah.
It's such a wonderful statement. And I wonder if you could tell me a little bit about the relationship and the choice to open the album that way.
I think it was a good piece to start with because, as you say, it's pretty defining that there's something new coming that you're going to hear something pretty new. What's important to know, it's like I never consciously thought of I have to renew any language or I have to. It's not like a research that I'm doing. It's just that this is the outcome of just my work and my world and my implication with the art world and many artists that I'm worked with and all my own influences. So all this music on this album, I think it's totally normal. And I think everybody should do this now because it's basically influences from what we have in our time now. So this piece is obviously inspired by Meshuggah with these riffs coming from time to time to give impulses, and then Metastasis by Xenakis. That is having this incredible opening sequence where they do long glissandi on the violin. I was interested in doing this with some sort of, actually my initial idea many years, 15 years ago, was to do this with violins basically. And then that never happened. And then I was invited to compose something for a festival. And then together with a colleague that was doing the other pieces, we said, let's go back to our childhood passions, with techno on one side because it was the 90s and there was also all this heavy metal and stuff. So I thought, why don't I try it with the guitar, this? later on, when I wanted to record this, I just asked Stephen O'Malley, because he lives in Paris too, if he could record the guitar parts. It was kind of fun because he didn't know what it was going to be, because I just asked him all the time, like, can you play from F sharp to D sharp, glissando, and it should take 14 seconds. And then can you take from this note to this note, and it should take 9 seconds. And and then I had the score. It was very precise. So then I could just patch everything together in the computer.
That's incredible. I love that. You've opened the door a little bit to my next question, which was going to be, just sort of the influences you moved through musically through your development, whether it was some of those heavy metal guitar players, Steve Vai, Yngwie, Eddie Van Halen, and then, you mentioned Xenakis and others. I'm curious, from the outside, those are very different musical universes. From the inside, from your perspective, could you talk a little bit about any connective tissue you perceive or you've experienced through all that?
Yeah, I grew up with a lot of music around me also. My brothers playing instruments and music. So always listen to many, many, many types of music. I was never interested in doing some hierarchy between classical music is the most like the best or something, and then there is pop and rock that is less good or something. That was never an issue. That's the same with all type of culture that I consume. I have the same love for Visconti as for B movies from like the 70s, or cannibal movies or something. So I don't, that's like, is it good? That, or it can be good in so many different ways. And you have maybe different parameters to measure if a Bruce Lee movie is good than you have when you watch something else, or the same with music, that you have like just different set of rules how to analyze stuff. But the quality is always the most important, and that's what counts to, that's the end of everything. So if you're not used to, I think also if you're not, I mean, actually I know that if you're not used to listen to a certain type of music, you will have little understanding in what the quality would be. If you brought up now some folk music from a country I've never heard about or something, I wouldn't be able to say if that was a very good example or very bad, because I just don't know that language. So I think having grown up with many types of music around me, I've really also had the chance of being really nerdy about many things. So I've been digging into many different types of music and got a pretty good feeling for how quality actually functions.
There's a lot in there that resonates for me, especially in my experience as a young person. I feel like for my whole life, I've been surrounded by music of all types and what people might call high art and low art, or popular art to classical art. I'm curious, do you have a theory either for yourself or maybe more broadly culturally, why it seems like, I think we're roughly age equivalent. I was born in the early 70s. It seems like something happened to those of us born, say, in the early mid 60s till maybe the early 90s. And then I think there was a much different shift. But I'm curious if you have any thoughts about what it was that started to break down those barriers for people, where this delineation between, again, what I'll awkwardly call high and low art seemed to matter much less and seemed to result in a lot of integrated work.
I don't know what it comes from, but I mean, actually, Tarantino is a quite good example of this in cinema when he talks about, because he has a love for all cinema. I think, I don't know if it's a generational thing, but I think maybe, yeah, it might be generational. We also grew up with like end of consumerism, one type of consumerism. There was a lot of also really good music around also. Yeah, all these bands in the 80s, it was like so good.
Yeah. I've chalked it up to, at least from my American point of view, I don't know how it was for people growing up outside of the States, but in America, when I was growing up, television was still providing a forum for a lot of, like, we just don't really have public intellectuals the way we used to. Like, I think of as a child, seeing Leonard Bernstein on television, making music so accessible, or seeing even like talk shows like Dick Cavett, he would have, people from a range of pop culture to academia and other things. It just seemed like these things got beamed into the home in this magical way. And as a young person to be able to take it all in and not really have it presented in the context of high versus low. It was just all part of the inputs.
That's true. I mean, we didn't have it. We didn't have such good TV when I grew up, but my father was into tennis. So he got this, he went up and mounted one of those round antenna dishes, on the roof to be able to watch some tournament. And we didn't care about this, but we were so excited because we got MTV, I think really at the beginning, actually, or around like, it was just so incredible. The quality also of and there was for everything, like the Headbangers Ball for heavy metal. There was like Yo MTV Raps. I remember the day, in 91 when they say, okay, now we're going to listen to the new single by Public Enemy. It's called Can't Trust This. And I would have these moments today, 30 years later, this is like a classic. But you have this coming out of your television at your home and they say that it's just a new single. I think that was really incredible. And I think MTV as a whole, I always try to mention this, sometimes I forget, but as a whole, this like 90s MTV has been so important for me.
Something else that's really interesting to me about your path is, your experience at the Royal College of Music and your application process. If I understand correctly, you applied for both jazz guitar and classical organ.
Yeah.
While you were certain you'd be accepted as a guitarist, you were actually accepted as an organist.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, what do you think the jazz department missed about you, or do you think they got it right?
Nah, I don't know. It's I've been always I've done many competitions and many things. Everything is like, it has to be on a high level, but then there's always a portion of random who they take it like from day to day. My guitar teacher at the time, he just said, oh no, but way better to go do a classical education. It's better than the jazz department, which it probably was also. I didn't think more about it then.
I talked to so many artists who went through Conservatory who were actually really dissuaded from pursuing any kind of jazz or improvisational study while they were in Conservatory.
Mm.
I'm curious, how was your schooling as it related to that?
As soon as you start to have an education and books about how to play jazz and stuff and music theory, it's kind of dead, right? I mean, as soon as you talk about it as soon as you teach it with rules and like an art form that has to be conserved, it's pretty off, I think. That's also a problem when you do a classical education, that it's a lot, I mean, also just the term conservatory is so wrong. It should be called Research Institute for Music or something. It's like to conserve something. It should be, when you're playing classical instruments, it's very technical and you need to have many skills that so you have to study older music, like older, early music, like classical music to contemporary music to even just be able to perform.
Right.
And also you have to learn so many things in composition also, just because it's so technical just to write a piece of music. Just like the technical thing of putting a pen onto a paper with staves to just write the music. You have to, it's a long way to there actually. So I think it's very good. You have to study something in one way doing it, and then you have to break free from it too. I've also taught, and I'm always struggling with this because I was always thinking I'm not going to be so academic when I teach. But in the end, I was as academic or even more than my teachers. Because you can only communicate something that is that you can prove to the students, because it has to be proven somehow.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Otherwise, it's all editorial and opinion.
Yeah, it's like something I would think. It's like just my opinion. So I think also when in classical music, we do a lot of style studies for composition. So you write a piece in the style of Bach or a piece in the style of Mozart, etc. Different ways of composition, both for forms and other things. But I think what this does in the end is that you study one composer that has now a set of rules that you can apply to make it sound like this composer, similar to this composer. And then you actually sharpens your ears just to be able to apply this on your own music later. That's how I see it. It's like when you croquis, these many artists, they have to do this croquis for years before they get to paint. And you just learn how to do shadows, or even if you don't do this later, it's just you're sharpening your perception.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And it's interesting you relate it to visual art as well, because I think of something I've heard about with writers. There are certain modalities where writing programs suggest that young writers type out like a Hemingway novel. And I think it's similar to what you were just talking about, in that you pick up the cadence, his feel for language, like you're doing it from the inside, and you start to learn either his tropes or even his way, you channel the way of thinking. It's fascinating.
Yeah, because you can then look at it and say, this is out of the style. And I think this is very important when learning something. And also for me, I mean, in my compositions, I have to be coherent. And this is something you learn from study other masters.
I see you in this interesting lineage, given who you've studied with, the position you hold. How do you reconcile sort of tradition and lineage doing this exploratory work, this sort of forward moving work? Or is the lineage you're in that of explorers?
I would say yes, because the teacher who was my mentor, who I studied with from the late 90s until she died in 2006, her name was Roland Falsinelli, and she was really an incredibly innovative organist. And she was also an incredible improviser, and she did some really hairy stuff. Even today, it's like, and she was incredible also in always renewing her language, relating to history. She was actually the person also who got me really into to open doors, like widen my horizons. Because when I was studying in the conservatory, I had to work a lot, so there was a lot of hours practicing. And she said, "Yeah, I think you should practice a little bit less and try to read more of you should be more interested maybe in Greek literature, because it has this relation to this." And then she also had an incredible knowledge of Italian cinema, for instance. Whenever I went to see her, we were talking more and more. And I think the last couple of times I saw her, we didn't even go to play any instrument or anything. We were just talking, discussing other concepts. And I think she had this incredible encyclopedic knowledge of art history and music and literature. She did this very, very, really avant-garde style, both composition and improvisation in the 50s, 60s, 70s. So I think it's in the lineage. I think I am more in the lineage with her than most of the other students that are now, or people who are older than me. And I'm just like doing contemporary music, and with the contemporary means that we have, like iPad. If I get an iPad, then I will see what can I do with this together with the organ, or I use some algorithms on a composition program. It's like, how can I fuck around with this to make something at the organ? And I think that's just what everybody should do. It's the normal way of just use all the new tools.
Well, talk to me a little bit about algorithmic process, where that comes from for you, how you translate a modality like that onto an acoustic instrument.
Oh, that's a difficult question. I think it's since the early 2000s, it has been a great tool for composers. And at this research center in Paris, IRCAM, they started early to make software to use for assisted composition. And this influenced many of my friends who were working there or teaching there or studied before in their composition. And that actually influenced me, even though I didn't know, I was never a programmer, so I couldn't really use this in that hardcore way that they code stuff and then it comes out notes. But there was more like a vibe that were interesting to me in the beginning. And then as soon as I got an iPad with more dumber applications that I could use, you know how it goes, I could start using this for my own work. And some of the pieces on the album also, they have, from the dumbest thing I can tell you is, I don't even know if it counts for an algorithm, but it's just, I needed a random generator to generate like a random series of notes of 56 notes. So I did this manually on the computer. And then, so that's the most stupid usage of it. And the most complicated is in this à bruit secret, where I use a tool called Gestrument, which is also a composition assisting tool where you can define a number of rules, like a scale or different chords or different rhythms. And then from what you have defined, you can like paint or draw the music on the iPad.
Oh, beautiful. That's fun.
It's a great tool, actually. It's developed by a composer called Jesper Nordin, who's a Swedish composer. And they are, he built it for himself as a tool, and now it became quite successful for other people too. But for all types of music, you can do pop songs or whatever with it.
We'll be back with more Spotlight On and Hampus Lindwall right after this break.
After listening to this episode, head to thetonearm.com, our online journal covering unexpected music and culture. This week on the Tonearm, saxophonist Donnie McCaslin chases primal energy from the Black Star Sessions to his latest album. Sarah Serpa and Jen Shu discuss how their mutual mentorship for musicians project is rewriting the creative music community. Synthesist Maria Terieva revisits her Buchla-driven sophomore album, Conservatory of Flowers, with a new perspective. And Chicago electronic musician Lennon explains how compositional maturity allows him to pull away from sonic excess. You'll find all this and more on the Tonearm. And while you're there, be sure to subscribe to our email newsletter. That's thetonearm.com. The Tonearm, putting a needle on the cultural wax.
And now, back to Spotlight On. Is there anything about the pipe organ from your perspective that makes it especially suitable for these types of, for lack of a better way to say it, these sort of computational or algorithmic thinking? Like, does the pipe organ lend itself to being used that way? Or is it just this happens to be your instrument and the approach you've chosen? I'm really curious about that.
I would say both. For me, it was natural just to use all these tools. So I would have done it any instrument. But what was now a really good thing with since a few, like 10 years maybe, is that there are many pipe organs that has MIDI. So you can easily do things from the computer, play them from the computer, and which stuff that I couldn't play with my own hands, so to say.
I don't know why I never thought about the fact that there'd be a MIDI interface for a pipe organ. It just seemed so, it's
perfect. It's like a perfect match. You can't have it on a flute, for instance, but at an organ, it's the best because it's already so mechanical and it's just like a huge machine.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. There's something steampunk about that. As I was listening to the album, every track, I would say to myself, oh, this is my favorite one. Like, I love this. It really builds and there's definitely an arc. The track I come back to the most is Swerve, though. That piece really stands out for me. Uh-huh. But I wonder, how did you approach, and this is a little bit of a nerdy question, and I apologize, but how did you approach the structure and the flow of the album or even the sequencing? Like, do you hear a story? Were you telling a story? Mm-hmm. Can you take me through? Or is it just like this is how it feels the best? This is how it sounds the best?
Yeah, it's more pragmatic than this. It's since it's also a vinyl, you have to count minutes on each side. So that leaves you with only a couple of different combinations. And then that's how then we thought that, one strong first, a little bit mellow after, and how you sequence stuff normally. That's how this came about. I don't even know if I did it or if Stephen O'Malley did it in the end.
That's incredible, actually. So that's a very, I love this idea. It comes up a lot that the dominant medium in any given time ends up influencing the music and the composition. And
I don't know.
the example people use all the time is the old 7-inch single, and how pop songs took that 2 to 3 minute convention.
Yeah.
So I love that was at play here, but it's also fascinating to me that you relinquished the sequencing. Not all artists do that.
But I think it when you listen to the CD now and everything is going one after the other, it functions really well. I think it was a natural way of putting the tracks. I couldn't imagine them in another order now.
Yeah. It must sound fantastic on vinyl.
Yeah, I don't know.
I would have to think.
Mostly, I think I listen to both. They have different qualities. I don't have such a good vinyl player, to be honest. So, yeah.
Well, I'll get one and I'll let you know.
Yeah.
I'm also really intrigued about, you articulated earlier about how Stephen recorded first, and really interesting to me because I didn't realize his parts weren't entirely improvised. So you gave him essentially, you conducted him, right? Or gave him a verbal score, it sounds like.
Yeah.
And then you built your parts. Was everything written? Were the organ parts written, or did you give him his piece?
Yeah, I wrote everything first.
Wow.
So when I came to record, it was just the easiest way to do this. He wanted to have time frames and the pitch to bend, but he didn't know if it was what type of music it was, what anything. Didn't have any clue until I recorded the organ parts and put everything together.
Do you remember his reaction when he heard it?
No, I didn't see him. I sent him the tracks.
That's incredible. That actually dovetails a little bit also into my next question, which is the nature of collaboration and some of the people you've collaborated with. You all seem to live at this edge of technology and art, whether it's in this example, you were able to leverage technology. You were able to basically transcend space and time in this collaboration.
Mm.
And I'm curious, what do you get from these collaborations? And I mean that a bit more directly in terms of, what are you learning about yourself, your instrument? What insights do you come away from that you might not get by just working alone?
Yeah, that's when I did my first album. It was just like organ compositions by my predecessor in the church, Jean de Monsieur.
Mm-hmm.
That it was kind of a natural thing to do this when I was appointed there. I wanted to prove myself as an organist for myself and also for others, because I did so much like detours. So also for people to understand what I was doing, I needed to have something quite classical also for, just to get accepted. And then I was about to do another record with my teacher's music, which didn't happen. And then I just thought I would just go with the flow for a while. And then all these collaborations just happen like fairly normally from different friends and different things. And I've learned so much from all these incredible people. I've collaborated with so many incredible musicians and artists. As you say, you learn a lot about the other person, but you learn a lot about yourself. It's when you come to another country, often you learn about the other country, but you actually learn more about your own country in contrast. And I think
right.
I've been collaborating with composer and visual artist Corey Archangel a lot. That's been a great collaboration because we both, when you work alone, you have there's so many questions, especially about my own work. I can work on it for a long, long time, and then I feel like I should just scrap everything. And it's like you don't have any references. And when we work together, we always have very easiness going with everything. We try to be more like Fluxus artists and go with the things that we think are good, And I think that's been helping me a lot also to put together this album. Some of the pieces even comes out of some of our collaboration concerts or so.
So you carry that sort of the inspiration from those collaborations. They're not siloed into those.
No,
Yeah, that's
no,
fascinating.
definitely not. And also playing with other instruments, Susana Santos Silva, who's an incredible trumpet player, I've been playing with a lot. Just I hear what she's playing, I try to match something at the organ, and those things stay with me after, and I incorporate a lot of things in the work.
Yeah.
Otherwise, also in the church I play, this is not everybody maybe knows this, but I play in this church in Saint-Esprit that is very, very active. So I play at least 4 masses per weekend there, Saturday and Sunday, and we have around like 1,500 persons per weekend coming. During these masses, there is the pieces or the things we do together with the parish, the people singing, the parishioners, and that's kind of set for different periods of the year, Christmas, Easter, etc. And then there are the more decorative parts where the organist is playing pieces also that fits with that particular Sunday. And most organists, particularly in France, there is this tradition of improvisation, because also the liturgy is you don't really know how long anything will take. The communion there can be more people at the communion or less, or you have an older priest who walks slower, or anything. So pieces are always tricky because they're either too long, either too short. It's very difficult to do. So most organists improvise, actually. And there's a quite fun thing with this is that I was doing improvisation with a teacher who was studying with his teacher, with the next teacher and next teacher. And we don't know where it started. The tradition is so long that we don't know where they started to teach this, actually, because there's no records before the 17th century, really.
That's really fascinating. I'm not a churchgoer in my adult life, but I can remember even as a child, I played piano growing up, and, I was paying attention to the music in church. I didn't have the vocabulary for it at the time, but I remember being so curious about sort of interlude moments. Like, it was clear there were parts of the Mass where there were songs, if you will, and then other times that seemed like variations on a melody. Again, I didn't have the vocabulary for this as a child, but I recognized that there was something different going on. And now when I go to church for a funeral or a wedding, especially during communion, it's really interesting. That's a fascinating bit of insight to understand what the organ player's experience has to be, the adaptability you have to have.
So that's the thing, I have a small TV, so I see what's happening downstairs, and I have to see when the priest is sitting down or something is happening, or I start or something. So every weekend I'm improvising there during the Mass, and it's so many hours of music. I've been doing this for 20 years in the church now, and I play all types of music, like really contemporary. I do stuff with electronics also with my iPad. So people also have started to get really curious, actually, about new music, and they get a different way of listening also from having heard so much new music.
So fast.
So that's also my room of experimentation, my experimentation studio a little bit during the mass. And there I try to integrate all my ideas that I get from these other people that I work with or so.
Do you record your sacred music?
No, now I've started thinking I wanted to do at least like a échantillon, something that you can have, so that every like 5 years I should record 1 weekend or something, just to have just the evolution.
I agree. That would be so wonderful. What do you understand either from your tradition that you mentioned, this tradition of that's now sort of lost to antiquity in a way, or at least the roots of it are.
Yeah.
What do you understand from that tradition or from your own personal experience as to what is the role of the organ and the music supposed to be in the context of the Mass? Why are you there? Why is it not silent?
Yeah, the organ came to church actually because of bad singing historically. There was, I can't remember the details now, but it's in the 8th century. There was a prince or something who had a small organ at his home. And every time he went to Mass, he thought they sang so badly and they couldn't keep the pitch and everything.
Wow.
This didn't change historically. But he said, I will give you my organ to the church because it has this long, you can do very long notes, long drone notes, and then you can sing in accordance to this, and you will sing better. And that's the way the organ actually came to the church. Before it was a pagan instrument. So and then it just stayed. I mean, it's a great instrument for the building also because it's you can play really loud. It's a perfect instrument for the church actually.
Yeah, it's fascinating. That's so funny because when I think about, I don't know how it is outside of America, but in America, in a lot of parishes, the people sing, I would say, reluctantly.
Yeah.
It's not an enthusiastic, it's very reserved. But the organ does function as almost as a tuning whistle. You know, it brings the congregation's voice into some semblance of tune and harmony.
Yeah.
it's If I can, I want to read you a couple of quotes from Robert Barry's liner notes and I want to ask a couple questions about them. He suggests that your work captures, quote, the temporal disjuncture of rabbit holing through endless browser windows while using the austere grandeur of Baroque organ sound, end quote. So that's like really specific observation about experiencing time in a digital space. And that rabbit holing through browser windows, it's so funny. Somebody just talked to me about that the other day. He said to me, my superpower is wasting time. but I'm curious how conscious it is for you in exploring sort of that fragmented, hyperlinked way of moving through information and moving through time. Like, is that what you're expressing here, or is that just Robert Barry saying what he's experiencing?
I think that's what I mean, I know what he hears. He hears this, that I've been digging really deep into very small ideas. And, every piece, it's almost only one idea. And I think that's maybe this rabbit holing he's talking about, that you can, which is really this internet thing also. Somebody talks to you about some, fish species, and then you get interested in it, and then you can spend like a day on this.
And it's 2 hours later.
Yeah, I was like, then YouTube at 3 a.m, some fisher. So I would say it's correct. The observation is correct about this. Also dealing with these technologies, it's definitely rabbit holing.
Yeah. Well, and similarly, I mean, I think there's sort of like a very cliche way I can think about this next question, but it seems to relate, for lack of a better way to say it, the organ is having a moment. There's so much contemporary music being done, whether it's in the ambient world, modern composition.
Yeah.
I first became aware of it maybe a decade or more now. John Zorn really embraced the organ for improvisation, which to me that's some really exciting music as well. So we have this ancient technology in this hyper-modern context. I guess my question is why?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of things. I mean, these are always cycles. So in 5 years, this moment is over. But it also spurred off this generation of they're actually only female. All of them. They started a little bit from Sweden with Ellen Arkbro, and she released a record I think in 2000. I don't know which year it was. It was called For Organ and Brass, which is really incredible. And she came to the organ not because she was interested in the organ. She came to the organ just because she was interested in the tuning. And these Baroque organs had this special temperament. And she was studying just intonation with Lamont Young. So she wanted to explore this and just came to the organ because the Baroque organ could reproduce some of those sounds. And then this became a little bit like a trend. So there are many others, like there's several from Sweden, but also Callie Malone. It also came, this was like independent, the Carolis Coverdale and Sarah Davashi. They also were working in a similar way. And then so there are actually several different things happening. There are also these people building some kind of strange organs with that has particularities. For instance, there's artists do in Berlin, Solmar Sprenger, who's built a more drone organ, where they have been doing also experimental bass pipes that are based from loudspeakers from techno clubs that can produce really low and intense bass sounds. And then there is a collective called Gamut Inc. in Berlin too, who are working only with automated organs with MIDI. And then there is Fujita from Japan, who has a very ritualized way of playing the organs. I guess that's part of the culture. I think many of those things, they came out a little bit independently, and then you get a lot of followers around who's been doing other things. So there's just so many people doing really interesting things actually now.
You know, you have this really interesting perspective, I think, because of the music you grew up with and around, and you mentioned the club scene of the 90s or the rave scene, and of course this classical training, this conservatory training. And so I think you sit at this interesting place where you can observe essentially the cultures of innovation and the cultures of tradition. From where you sit, what do you observe about those two? My sense is that to the outsider, they seem like much different realms, but the closer you look, there is much more overlap. I wonder what resonates for you across those cultures. Do you view it as a spectrum, or I'm curious?
Yeah, there's definitely a general fascination for the organ, for the instrument, from all these different groups. Then sometimes, these experimental pipes and so, maybe they have more in common with electronic music. This neo minimalism has more in common with pop or old minimalism, and it's a reiteration of that kind of music. I don't know if they're so related to each other actually, but I think the music is related just because of the instrument, of course.
Yeah.
But not necessarily in how it's composed or so. But it's a great group of people actually, and everybody is friends, which is really fun.
Do you have like an organ convention or something that you go to?
There is one in Amsterdam actually every year, but generally everybody now from these spheres are very interested in what everybody else is doing. So there's a lot of dialogue actually between everyone.
Yeah, I would imagine. Tell me a little bit about the next iteration of your collaboration with Steve. And my understanding from what I read in preparation is, well, tell me what high and low is, and tell me how it builds on what you've already done together.
Yeah, I wanted to mention it since we were talking about this in the beginning about high and low culture. But we got an invitation to commission for a new piece for organ and guitar. Then I just thought of this Kurosawa movie, High and Low, which is about a rich businessman who gets his son kidnapped. And it turns out that the kidnapper took the wrong kid. So he kidnapped his butler's kid instead. And then the whole movie is about this dialogue between like high and low in terms of this rich person and the butler and the kidnapper, etc. when we got the invitation, I said, you should just think about this movie and maybe get inspired from this. And I think high and low also corresponds so well with, they have the, in every reason actually, the organ is high up, the guitar is, it will stand downstairs and play. We have the idea of high culture and low culture. There's the pitch things that we can play with in the piece as well. So it embodied all our concepts for this piece. So that's how this title came about.
And it premieres this fall?
September 30.
Exciting.
Oh yeah.
Exciting. The last question I have for you is, for someone who comes across your work for the first time, what do you hope they come away with in terms of understanding the pipe organ and sort of what it is and what it can be? Are you an advocate for the pipe organ as a contemporary instrument?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, if you come across this music and you like it, then I think there are big chances that this person is gonna dig deeper into the organ and the organ music. And of course, then I think the next step is that what I hope is that to make people discover more other music. So I think all the music that I love, I hope somebody will read, an interview when I talk about, we talked today about Xenakis or Steve Vai, and that this can influence people to go and listen to more music and discover more things and just get a broader perspective of music.
Thank you so much, Hampus Lindwall. And as always, thank you for listening to Spotlight On. If you enjoyed this episode, check out my discussion with Terrence Hannum from earlier this year, or my 2024 interview with Heinbach, or 2023's with Brandon Seabrook. All are available on spotlightonpodcast.com. Spotlight On is executive produced and hosted by me, Lawrence Purrier. We're produced and marketed by Michael Donaldson. Editing and sound design is by Terry Grant. Our theme music is by Q-Burn's Abstract Message. Thank you so much for supporting our work. Please rate and review us wherever you listen to podcasts. And for more interviews and writings from me, as well as a diverse array of contributors, check out Tonearm.com. Thanks for listening, be safe, and stay in touch.